just really clear, this conversation is not to speak down to negate the work that she's done, to in any way hassle Louise Nicholas, because phenomenal human being, great New Zealander, you know, one of the more high profile victims of sexual crime, and one of the biggest advocates for women's rights and for victims at the moment as well. So the Louise Nicholas Trust, there it is, louisenicholastrust.org.nz, all about sexual prevention is a huge problem in Aotearoa. The goal of the Louise Nicholas Trust is to stop sexual violence from happening in the first place. In order to prevent sexual violence, we must understand and address the risk and protective factors at the individual, relational, community and societal levels. By working together, every person has a role to play in preventing sexual violence. So no, we don't have a bone to pick against Louise Nicholas, but you know, in this conversation today, she got something or gets something pretty wrong, and I think it's important to point out. You back with us, Joey?
I am.
Yep, I can hear you. All good. All right, so let's play this first part. So they're talking about 3 strikes, right? And the first part of this conversation is the host, is Jenny May, speaks to the victim advocate, which of course is Louise Nicholas, and she's asking about what survivors want when it comes to 3 strikes. Like what do people want? And this is the first part of the conversation.
Louise, can I start with you? Why is it that you think it's a good thing that we bring back 3 strikes?
I've been doing this work supporting survivors through the criminal justice system for 15, 16 years now. And during that time when the 3-strike law was there, those that were given the strike, our survivors were saying, good, this needs to happen because we don't want this person back out in the community reoffending. If this can be a deterrent for that person, for the community, it's a good thing.
Roger, can I bring you in?
So we've also got a criminologist who is part of this conversation as well. His name is Roger Brooking. And we'll let kind of them set up their shop front first of all. They kind of both have an opening statement. And then we'll look specifically to where Louise has got it wrong, in my opinion. And I think, I don't often like to speak for us, Chewy, but I think what we know of and what the show knows of, what I know of the 3 strikes law around the world is it doesn't work, and it's not it doesn't offer a deterrent in any way, shape, form whatsoever. In fact, in the ways that international countries who have things like lots of gun murders, sometimes it can go the other way. So someone has 2 strikes against them, and they know that if they get the 3rd strike, then they're done forever. Then they will do anything to get out of that law. It doesn't matter how many people they kill. Their only objective is to get away, no surrender. So it doesn't work. It's not good around the world. That's what the research shows as well. What I'm going to point to and what we're going to talk about as well is the thing that Louise gets wrong is not necessarily her position. It's what she wants from the 3 strikes. What she says victims wants, 3 strikes won't actually provide. So when I say she's wrong, it's that she's saying this is what we want, blah, 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 but 3 strikes won't provide any of that. So that's the area we'll talk through. But let's go to the criminologist, Roger Brooker. We'll give him a couple of minutes as well, and he'll lay out why he is again the 3 strikes.
Why is it that you don't want 3 strikes to come back?
Well, there's 3, it's an ignorant piece of legislation, and there's 3 good reasons why it just doesn't work. First of all, it doesn't act as a deterrent, and that's primarily because people who end up committing these kinds of crimes have all kinds of mental health issues, addictions, brain injuries, traumatic brain injury, other neurodiverse issues, and they don't make rational decisions and think about the consequences. Well, I've done this twice before. If I do it once more, I'm going to get a 7-year prison sentence. They don't think like that. So that's
one thing just to make clear as well. In New Zealand, it's called 3 strikes and the max. That's what I remember very well talking to Rodney Hyde about it. And what it meant was in America, they used to call it 3 strikes and you're out, like baseball, because on the 3rd strike, you were just locked away forever. Whereas in New Zealand, it was always 3 strikes and the max, which means on the 3rd strike, you would get the max sentence for that crime. So like, We spoke recently of an MP who committed some crimes when it came to stealing, and I think the max was multiple, like 5 or maybe even 7 years in prison. So if someone had taken a dress, just to use that example, and that was their third strike, no matter what the judge thought, no matter what the circumstances around it, they would have to have given them 7 years in jail for that dress. Not to obviously say what happened is okay, but just that example popped into my mind. So in New Zealand, it was 3 strikes and the max. Do you want to say anything before I keep playing, Joe?
No, keep rolling.
All right, keep rolling.
The first thing, it does not deter offending. The second thing is that it removes the judicial discretion of judges. Basically, it makes judges, they have to impose these long sentences, so it turns judges into rubber stamps, basically. And I don't think that's helpful for justice in New Zealand. And thirdly, when the 3 strikes legislation was actually operating in New Zealand, it led to some manifestly unjust results. There was a couple of individuals who got a 7-year prison sentence, one of them for kissing somebody in the street. That was his 3rd strike. And the other one was a guy already in prison on his 2nd strike, and he patted a female prison officer on the backside. Not cool. I'm not saying that's justifiable behaviour, but it doesn't justify a 7-year prison sentence with no parole.
So there you go. That's the first 2 parties who are setting out their wares when it comes to this conversation, Chewy. I'm going to go through next and show you a couple of things that Louise Nicholas says. And again, the disagreement with her position is what she says victims want, the 3 strikes law will not provide. I'll show you that in a second. But anything you want to jump in there, Chewy?
Yeah, look, I kind of want to put my thoughts in here about 3 strikes. I agree. It doesn't work. It is great if you want to appear tough on crime, which is why you see it parroted by the people that parrot it around the world. We have decades of data from the US that it doesn't work. We have tried it here and it doesn't work. There are people that are unfortunately the victims of crime, and yes, it's an emotive issue for them. Of course they want these people to go away for longer. You know, I feel for them. That's a natural human reaction. But is it right? Like, justice has to be, in some cases, really dispassionate about stuff. And if they're going to go with those sort of vibes of just punishment, not crime prevention, which is what we should be looking at, but punishment.
Yeah.
Then that's what we're going to get. And in every case that 3 strikes has been trialed, what you end up with is overcrowded prisons.
Yeah.
And I think if you combine this with getting rid of cultural reports as well, like, we don't want to understand what has led this person down the path. We don't want that information. We don't want that data. We just want to crack down on this person. And then we want to make sure that we have the heaviest bat there available at all times.
Yeah, and remember
the combo.
The idea of the cultural. So let me paint you a picture. That one, the guy got 7 years for kissing the wrong person. It was Friday night. He'd been out with the boys. They were all happy. They had a great time. He was drunk. He thought he saw someone he knew. Went up, gave him a kiss, was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And the person who he kissed took umbrage, called the police. 7 years. The no cultural reports, and remember, I learnt this as well, so I'm not saying I had this all right. Cultural reports means anything leading up to the crime that might impact the crime, like those things that I've just said in this hypothetical, that now won't be looked at, won't be negotiated, and as the criminologist Roger Brooking was saying, the judge will have to just go, "Sorry, dude, chunk 7 years." Now think about this as well. And I haven't researched this so much, but remember, this government is also about saving money, about being proactive with New Zealand's funds. Putting people in prison who don't need to be in prison for 7 years for a kiss for 7 years is hugely expensive. It's $190,000 a year, I think, to keep a basic, not even like maximum security, but a basic security prisoner. So there you go. 7 years, you've just cost the country over $1 million for a kiss. But this is what this government and this side of the political spectrum do all the time. They'll say one thing, And they'll say, oh, it's all about saving money. You know, government's got to cut its cloth. We've got to make sure we don't overspend, we don't overcommit. And then when it comes to things like this, they will just commit to doing things that will end up costing far more than we need to spend on issues that don't need to be handled like that. So it's hypocrisy and it's stupidity as well, Chewy.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so let's go to the second part of this conversation. So this is Louise Nicholas again. It's just a 16-second clip, and the question gets asked by Jenny May. You know, what do offenders want? What do they want? What does as an offender advocate or a victim's advocate? What do the victims want? What do they need? And listen to this very quick statement.
Well, for a lot of our survivors, Jenny May, they're not. All they want is for the person that has harmed them to get the help that is needed, so that when they do come back out into our community, they are safe. The community is safe.
So straight at the first point, 3 strikes doesn't do that. In fact, do you think that the person that we're talking about who kissed someone and got 7 years, they're going to have a positive time in jail going, oh, yep, I shouldn't have kissed that person. Now I'm going to get better, and when I come back out into society, I'm going to be a better person. So my disagreement with Louise Nicholas has to do with what she's looking for, I believe, from 3 strikes. 3 strikes doesn't provide. I'll play you one more, Chewy, and then you can have a crack at it. This is the same sort of thing. What victims want, and she does a list of things. I've got them written down. It's about 60 seconds ish, and so this is one of the reasons why Louise Nicholas supports the 3 strikes legislation.
They don't believe that what has happened to them is the time that is given for a prison sentence. Like, you know, if you rape somebody, the prison sentence is 20 years. We've never ever seen that. That has never happened. But at the end of the day, it comes down to our survivors are wanting that person who has harmed them to do their time, but also be held accountable, to actually show that remorse, want to come out, not harming again. That's what they want. They want them to get the help that they need. And our prison systems don't really provide that. There are programs out there, problem being, they're not working. We need something different within.
So the criminologist actually talked in that after that segment as well, and he actually said, I agree, programs that are currently in there not working. But to show remorse, to do their time, to be held accountable, to not harm again, to get the help they need, and to stop harming. Other than perhaps you could argue do their time, nothing else from that list will necessarily be provided by 3 strikes. So again, pardon me, the thing that my disagreement with Louise Nicholas in this instance is that what she's looking for from three strikes, 3 strikes will not provide, Chewy.
She's making good points about what she needs. I 100% agree. Like, there's some absolutely fuck sentences out there when it comes to sexual assault and that sort of thing. There are definitely cases where you see the judgment and you go, what the fuck was the judge think? You know? When it comes to this, though, when you look at what leads people down, right, there's so much space for intervention before we get to the there's always signs. Like, people don't go out and decide to be a rapist just out of thin air.
Yeah.
And if we're looking at, it's such a hard argument, because there's people going, well, what would you do about fucking rapists? Well, the whole thing would be to try and not have them rape for a start. So what do we talk about? Do we talk about people's home lives where a lot of this is set up? Do we talk about their addiction issues? None of that is a punchy election slogan. None of that is going to get votes, ever. It might be effective, but we'll never see it. We'll never see it on that bumper sticker, right? Everything we know is that prevention and rehabilitation gets better results than rolling out a fucking, a Victorian model, or just chuck everybody in a black hole.
Yeah, I mean, then you got to start to ask, why is this happening? And we already know that, you know, David Seymour in particular, I think, wants to build prisons to hold, is it 5,000 more prisoners? And then if we can't afford that, what'll happen? It'll get privatized. back pocket. You know, it's those things. But also, Chewie, you said the question, what about rape, right? What do we do about rape? And I agree. I would like to see those people treated as harshly as possible at that point in time. However, if we're going to have that hypothetical conversation, what about rape? We also have to have the other end of the spectrum conversation. What do we do about the guy who kissed someone and got 7 years? What do we do about the guy who put his hand? Obviously, do I need to have a caveat? We don't support that kind of course I don't need to. You already know that. But we also have to have the conversation on the other end is, what about something that on the level of offences is quite minor that gets 7 years? So as long as we're having both of those conversations, I think it's a fair conversation. What happened in that chat was, and you know, Louise Nicholas, we've never heard someone get 20 years for rape. Great, but yes, I'm with you. Like, let's have that conversation. But we also have to have, what about the guy that got 7 years? It has to be a part of this conversation as well. That's a full and honest conversation about this issue to then hopefully find an answer.
They want to pour money into this, just absolutely unrestricted money, pour it into longer prison sentences and that sort of thing. But what they don't want to do is pour money into these programs that look at the people that are doing family harm, sexual offenders, all of that sort of thing, have to beg, borrow, scrape. Can you imagine how much of a soul-crushing job to be like a good counselor? You have to be an empathetic person, right? You have to put yourself in that person's shoes and try and guide them through changing their thinking, you know, making them realize they've done horrible things and that they can change. You have to go through that, and you get paid a couple of bucks over minimum wage sometimes, you know, and these people have to go for funding grants and all of this sort of stuff, big borrow, prove that they're worthy of a paycheck.
Yeah.
And so it's people that are really driven to do that, are just burning themselves out in this role. And then we get a government like this that comes in and doesn't acknowledge that at all, because rehabilitation is soft. We don't want to be soft. The only thing that works is toughness, lock them away, which is why famously there weren't rapists in the good old days. You know,
yeah,
like
we've just gotten soft now.
Having a death sentence didn't stop these things. Why do they think that 3 strikes is?
Yeah, and I think that the point that the criminal and look, for fairness, you know, Louise Nicholas pushed back on the point about, you know, people don't think these things out logically. She said some do. I agree, some do. Some people have a complete sound mind when they commit horrific crimes. Others aren't. Again, you got to have the full conversation. You can't say all are or all aren't. Some are not. And if you're not in your right mind, whether it's through rage, whether it's through alcohol, whether it's a mental health issue, whatever it is, that's a mitigating factor. Does it mean they get away with committing a crime? No, of course not. But it should be a different result. What my thought about prison and whatever is, actually, as Louise said, is probably 99% of people in prison will eventually get back out in society. What we should be doing is what is best for them to get out and have a successful life continued on and not reoffend and not do something else that will cause them to go back in again. Now, I think everyone would agree with that, but we get one part of the political spectrum who will give like lip service to that. They would agree with that, and then they'll bring in 3 strikes, which has got nothing to do with that. So what I would do, if you were sitting on the 9th floor and Chewie was the Prime Minister, nationalise everything, is I'd be going, let's get all the research, let's get all the evidence, let's get all the people together, let's get all those community groups who are doing this, and let's find how this works best of all. And let's put that in place. Not just, we'll go back to what didn't work last time again by a national-led government, and we'll make it not work again, but we'll have more people in prison. Because Labour, they just open the gate and let everybody out, and we're going to put everybody in. Vote National.
We've talked about this for so many other issues as well, right? Is that the prevention is the key to get people when they're young and broken, rather than waiting till they're older and even more broken, and then putting them in a factory that essentially breaks them even more is just a one-way trip to a hiding. Like, it just doesn't work. Like, three strikes, I think the thing that really annoys me about three strikes is it's just a blunt instrument.
Yeah.
Like, it disregards fact, evidence, background history. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. And it's so infuriating when it's something that is so clearly not effective